Good morning, everyone. It's Thursday, May 6th. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Kim Mo-gyan. Top diplomats from South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. agreed to keep working together for the complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula, stressing once again the importance of trilateral cooperation toward that goal. South Korea reported 574 new COVID-19 cases Thursday. Health authorities will begin accepting reservations for COVID-19 vaccinations from people between 70 to 74 years old beginning today. And the Biden administration has endorsed a broad waiver of all intellectual property protections for COVID-19 vaccines in an effort to bring an end to the pandemic. Our top story this morning, the top diplomats of South Korea and Japan have met in the UK to discuss a series of thorny issues, but they were unable to narrow their deep differences over historical and environmental matters. But during a separate trilateral meeting with the U.S., the three sides agreed to cooperate on North Korea. Our foreign affairs correspondent Yoon Jung-min starts us off.
South Korean Foreign Minister Chung Eui-yong met on Wednesday with his Japanese counterpart Toshimitsu Motegi for the first time since taking office, as Seoul-Tokyo ties remain strained over historical issues and other matters. The two-way meeting was held in London right after a trilateral meeting with the U.S. on the sidelines of a G7 ministerial meeting. During the meeting, Chung delivered Seoul's opposition to Japan's plan to discharge radioactive water from Fukushima into the ocean, adding there are deep concerns over Tokyo announcing the plan without enough consultations with its neighbors. They also talked about the thorny historical issues of compensating Korean victims of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement and forced labor, on which they could not narrow their differences. But Seoul and Tokyo agreed to work together along with Washington on North Korea issues for the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. They also pledged to continue communication on pending issues and develop a future-oriented relationship. During their meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on the same day, they agreed to keep working together for the complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula, stressing again the importance of trilateral cooperation toward that goal. Seoul's foreign ministry also said Blinken shared the Biden administration's new policy on North Korea. Now the review is complete. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Before the G7 summit set for June in the UK, a series of ministerial-level meetings are being held to discuss a slew of issues at hand. Wednesday marked the end of the foreign ministers' meetings. There, multiple issues were touched upon, from COVID-19 to North Korea and the crisis in Myanmar. Our Kim Do-yeon has the details.
The Group of Seven's foreign ministers pledged to expand the manufacturing of COVID-19 vaccines with a goal of shortening the lifespan of the pandemic. We commit to working with industry to facilitate expanded manufacturing at scale of affordable COVID-19 vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics, and their component parts, said the ministers in a joint statement after the meeting. They added this could be done by promoting partnerships between companies and encouraging voluntary licensing and tech transfer agreements on mutually agreed terms. As for global peace, the ministers urged North Korea to return to dialogue. The communique released on Wednesday read, "We remain committed to the goal of complete, verifiable, and irreversible abandonment of all of the DPRK's unlawful weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missile programs in accordance with relevant UN Security Council resolutions." As for nuclear weapons, they also showed their commitment to preventing Iran from developing them. The ministers welcomed hints of a return to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action by the US and Iran, saying the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action remains the best way to ensure the exclusively peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear program. It is vital that Iran preserves a space for these discussions by avoiding any further escalation. As for the crisis in Myanmar, the ministers condemned violence by the military while urging for the release of political prisoners, including State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi. Foreign and development ministers of G7, along with foreign ministers from South Korea, India, Australia, and South Africa, met in London as a part of the G7 meetings ahead of the summit, which will be held in June. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Now on the COVID-19 situation in South Korea, the nation reported 574 new COVID-19 cases Thursday, possibly due to fewer tests over the Children's Day holiday. Now, even so, cluster infections continue across the nation, including those in 2 large department stores in Seoul. Of Thursday's cases, 562 were local and 12 were from overseas. 4 more people died of the virus, raising the death toll to 1,851. Now, meanwhile, as for the vaccination program, a total of more than 3.5 million people have received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. And beginning today, South Korea's health authorities will begin accepting reservations for COVID-19 vaccinations from people between 70 and 74 years old, as well as those with chronic respiratory diseases. Reservations begin at 10 a.m. Korea time, with this group set to get the AstraZeneca shots. People who are 65 to 69 can start reservations on May 10th, and those 60 to 64 3 days after that. The 65 to 74 age group will get their first shots from May 27th through June 19th. Germany and the World Health Organization say they will house a new global data hub to prepare for and prevent future public health threats like the COVID-19 pandemic. This comes as countries like Japan are still struggling to contain the spread. Our Kim Hyo-sun reports.
The WHO and Germany have announced that a global monitoring center aimed at detecting future pandemic threats will be set up in Berlin, highlighting that the world has learned that challenges like COVID-19 cannot be tackled by a single country. The WHO says the center will quickly analyze related data to predict, prevent, prepare for, and respond to risks worldwide. The center, which Germany has agreed to fund with $36 million, is in line with the transformation the WHO says it seeks to achieve.
So the vision is not to create another big bureaucratic WHO institution somewhere. It really speaks to what Dr. Tedros has been saying about transformation. Transformation in WHO, people speak about reform and they speak about all of these words. This is about transforming the way this organization engages with the world.
The news comes as countries still grapple with the rampant spread of the virus, with Japan reporting over 4,000 daily cases for the 3rd straight day on Wednesday, despite the country celebrating a 5-day Golden Week holiday from May 1st. As Japan sees no signs of a clear reduction of infections, the government is reportedly considering whether to extend its 3rd COVID-19 state of emergency beyond the May 11th deadline. The current state of emergency covers Tokyo, Osaka, as well as Kyoto prefectures. Meanwhile, there are calls within Brazil that demand tougher border controls to curb the influx of the Indian variant. Concerned that the emergence of the Indian variant on top of the other variants in Brazil could make it even more difficult to control the situation, Brazil's 27 states have raised their concerns to the country's welfare minister. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
The Biden administration has endorsed a broad waiver of all intellectual property protections for COVID-19 vaccines in an effort to bring an end to the pandemic. U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai announced Washington's stance on Wednesday, saying that President Biden strongly believes in intellectual property protections. But in order to end the global health crisis soon, he supports the waiver of such protections for vaccines to fight the virus. The remarks come amid calls for the World Trade Organization to ease global trade restrictions in relation to the vaccines, enabling more countries to produce more supplies of the life-saving jabs. A UN agency has ranked South Korea number 3 in the world in terms of its industrial performance and competitiveness last year, behind only Germany and China. This was measured and compiled last July by the UN's Industrial Development Organization. They looked at 153 countries in terms of technology, the amount of value added through industry, and the quality and size of each country's exports. In 1990, South Korea ranked 17th, and in 2019, it ranked 5th, but has now overtaken Japan and the U.S. The report says South Korea has been able to develop further despite the pandemic-triggered economic crisis. South Korea's foreign exchange reserves hit a record high in April. The Bank of Korea said Thursday that they amounted to some $452 billion, an increase of around $6 billion compared to March. It attributed the rise to the weaker greenback as well as an increase in revenue from foreign currency assets. The previous record was set 2 months ago. As of March, South Korea's reserves were the 9th largest in the world. The global surge in demand for cryptocurrency has seen the market capitalization of the meme-inspired Dogecoin soar past $80 billion. Started in 2013, the token has exploded in price, spiking more than 13,000% in recent months. This puts its market cap above many internationally recognized corporations, including Adidas, BMW, and General Motors. Watchers say Dogecoin's rally was mostly sparked by social media postings by Dogecoin fan Elon Musk, as anticipation grows for his guest hosting of Saturday Night Live this weekend. The amount of new housing supplied in South Korea this year is expected to be at an all-time high. Finance Minister Hong Nam-ki said on Thursday at a ministerial meeting on the property market that roughly 500,000 houses will go onto the market this year. This includes private housing, which accounts for about 360,000 to 390,000 homes, and public housing, which makes up about 92,000 homes. The government will also announce additional new sites for public housing this month as part of plans aimed at cooling the overheated real estate market. The minister said that the government will go all out to meet its housing supply goals. More Asian American women have been attacked in the U.S., the latest in a series of hate crimes against Asians in the country. This time, 2 Asian women standing at a bus stop in San Francisco were stabbed. Lee Seung-jae reports.
Anti-Asian hate crime continues to be a big problem in the U.S. In this latest case, 2 Asian women who were standing at a bus stop in downtown San Francisco on Tuesday evening were stabbed. One of the victims, an 85-year-old woman, was taken to a nearby hospital to undergo surgery. A 55-year-old male suspect was arrested 2 hours after the attack. Local police say a motive has not yet been determined, and they are investigating to determine whether hate crime charges should be brought. The stabbing follows an attack against 2 Asian women in their 60s when 50-year-old African-American Daryl Doles attacked them with a cinder block at a liquor store in Maryland early Tuesday. The victims were store employees and were closing up when Doles broke in and attacked them. Police have yet to specify if the incident is being treated as a hate crime. On Sunday, 2 Asian women were attacked with a hammer in New York City as the suspect demanded they remove their masks. One of them suffered a laceration and was hospitalized. These are just a handful of dozens of similar incidents across the U.S. where Asians have been brutally attacked. The majority of the victims have been women. Earlier this year, 8 people, 6 of whom were Asian women, were killed in a mass shooting in Atlanta. Despite many characterizing the murders as a hate crime, the suspect has not been charged with a hate crime yet, but the probe continues. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Myanmar's shadow government, set up by ousted lawmakers, has formed a People's Defense Force to protect civilians as the military continues its crackdown on anti-coup protesters. The National Unity Government explained Wednesday that this is intended as a precursor to a federal union army. The group added its duty is to enforce effective security reforms to end 70 years of civil war. The global community has condemned violence carried out by the Colombian government as 19 people were killed during recent anti-government protests. The U.S., the EU, and the UN Human Rights Office were among those to voice concerns. Tens of thousands of Colombians have taken to the streets in demonstrations that began last Wednesday against a proposed tax reform, but have since grown into broader protests against the government of President Ivan Duque. The tax law proposal was retracted and a resignation of key cabinet members followed to appease the protesters, but to no avail. So far, more than 800 have been reported injured during the protests. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, people are shopping online more than ever, resulting in more waste from packaging. Due to the severity of the situation, South Korea's logistics industry is looking for new ways to reduce the amount of waste. Kim Chang-ah has more.
This is a packaging site for one of Korea's biggest online bookstores. Usually, when we order books online, boxes are much bigger than they need to be, meaning bookstores need to use bubble wrap or plastic packaging to fill the space. This creates more plastic waste. But this machine automatically customizes the boxes to fit the books perfectly.
We have reduced the amount of plastic being used by about 40%. We will expand our eco-friendly shipping system.
With a whopping increase in deliveries due to the pandemic, excess trash is becoming a huge issue. With the problem too big to ignore, online retailers as well as logistics companies are trying to go green. More companies have switched to reusable boxes when delivering fresh produce. And there are some that have changed their plastic packaging to 100% paper. A local cosmetics company is now using paper wrapping and tape instead of plastic and styrofoam.
We are now using eco-friendly packaging that can be recycled to reduce the amount of delivery waste.
This comes as ESG, or the environmental, social, and governance criteria for companies, is becoming increasingly important. Consumers have shown that they prefer companies which are more socially and environmentally responsible. However, even with these efforts, the amount of plastic waste increased by more than 20% last year in South Korea, showing that much more needs to be done. Kim Chang-ah, Arirang News.
850 tons of plastic and 1,000 tons of plastic bags are thrown out every day here in South Korea. And this has a significant impact on greenhouse gas emissions. To help realize the nation's goal of carbon neutrality by 2050 and to reduce daily waste, people are being offered extra incentives to recycle. Our Choi Won-jung reports.
In the back street of a local community center in Seongnam, Gyeonggi-do Province, a recycling center opens twice a week. It's called a resources circulation store, where local residents don't throw away their daily waste, such as plastic bottles, but instead recycle them for something in return.
By simply recycling your trash, you get points on your app, which you can exchange for Seongnam's own local currency.
Around 5,000 plastic bottles are collected at this center every single day, along with other waste items, from glass bottles to old batteries.
I randomly stopped by the center one day. I began collecting items because I could get some money in my pocket, keep the neighborhood clean, and also protect our environment. I've been doing this for about a month now.
The amount of plastic waste in the nation increases every year. But the number of businesses that manage resource circulation is also growing. In 2019, there were more than 20,000 circulation businesses registered in South Korea. But one local business does things a little bit differently, turning waste into something more useful. It takes used lipsticks, which have been donated, sorts them by color, and then melts them down to create crayons. Experts say efforts to keep recycling can help reduce carbon emissions. Key for the nation's goal of carbon neutrality by the year of 2050.
When it comes to carbon neutrality, the most important thing is to stop using depleted resources like fossil fuels. Instead, if we utilize this recyclable waste, we can save our resources while also managing levels of waste.
As it is a major issue, the South Korean government plans to reduce the amount of plastic waste by 20% by the year of 2025. It also plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 30% over the next 10 years. Choi Won-jung, Arirang News.
Good morning. If you dressed warmly for the morning commute, it could feel a bit hot in the afternoon as most regions will notice big temperature differences today. Gaps between the lows and highs can be as wide as 15 degrees Celsius. And this morning, Hamyang in Gyeongsang-Namdo province saw morning temperatures just slightly above the freezing mark. But highs will be hovering in the low to mid-20s across the country by the afternoon, and Gyeongju will be topping out at 27 degrees, Daegu, Gwangju at 25 degrees. Meanwhile, air quality will be decent except for some western regions during the morning, but clean air is in store by the afternoon under sunny skies. Then we're looking at another short round of rain tomorrow, but sunny skies should return for the Parents' Day weekend. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that will do it for us at this hour on Arirang News. We'll be back with more of the day's headlines at noon Korea time, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching and goodbye.